I want to know when will the meeting get start?
Uh, Hello everyone. So sorry for the delay. We will start in a few minutes.
Shall I start?
Yeah.
A very good evening to all. Thank you for being out there today with us. I am Rashida Dilwan. Me and Tanmay are anchors for the day. We, Chanakya, the Finance and Investment Cell of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar College, feels privileged to share our warm greetings to all the attendees. As you all must think, earning money is a difficult task. But handling that money, handling your money with full efficacy and efficiency, hello, I'll start again. We, Chanakya, the Finance and Investment Cell of Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar College, feels privileged to extend our warm welcome to all the attendees. So, all of you must think earning money is a difficult task. But handling your money with full efficiency and efficacy is an intricate task, it's complicated and complex. The answer to these complexities lies in terms like wealth management, wealth maximization, Dosa Economics, financial markets, and asset classes, which we will be talking about today. Have you ever wondered how rich people are so stable in being rich? What common practices do they follow? Where's your curiosity today? We will also be talking about various career domains in this prestigious finance field. Now some instructions. First of all, keep your mics off during the presentation. Second, if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them up in the Q&A. Please type them up in the chat box. We will put them up during the Q&A session. Now I would like Tanmay to take over.
Thank you, Akashita, and good afternoon, everyone. It is a great pleasure for me to introduce our today's speaker, and he is working as senior associate in algorithmic trading at Excella Advisory Services. He is the co-founder of Tradia Advisory Services, and today he will be sharing his unique insights of finance and investment world. So let's give a warm welcome to our speaker, Amit Pillai.
Thanks, Tanmay. Hi, guys. My name is Amit Pillai. I've been introduced by Tanmay here. So I'll just start without taking any more time. I think we have already delayed the webinar quite a lot. So just give me 2 minutes. I'll share my screen and then we'll start. Uh, can someone just confirm if the screen is visible?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. All right, so I'll just introduce myself again. So I graduated from VNIT Nagpur in 2014, post which I had a stint with Reliance Industries. That was my core field. Roughly about 1.5 years later, I shifted to a company named Axel Advisory Services. This was something which I wanted to try out on my own. I ventured into trading. To be frank, the trading that we did was not in the stock markets. It was more in the bond market. So this was European interest rate futures trading that we used to do. So for the next 5.5 years, I have been there till roughly about 2018. Since 2018, I have been a part of the algorithmic team at Axel Advisory Services. And since then, once the pandemic hit, I ventured into my own when my company. So we started a company named Tradia, which was there to provide B2B research to companies which would come out in the future for stock market trading, for bonds trading, for any other asset class that we know of. That's a brief introduction about myself, and we'll start with the topic today. So before starting the topic, I'll just put out a very small story that I have been, I'm very fond of with respect to trading. So this story goes like this. There was this trader back in the 1920s. Now, if people who don't know what 1920s was like, so 1920s was a time which had a lot of turmoil. We had a pandemic then also, and then furthermore, 1929 was the year when the first depression hit. So that was the first time when something of the scale of 2008 crisis had actually hit the world, right? So back in 1929, so this entire scenario is somewhere from that time. So this guy, he was a very good trader in the markets, and he used to, every time he would trade, once he was free, he would just go down to get his shoes polished, right? So when he would go down to get his shoes polished, there was this very small child who would, and back then this was a norm there, that small children would come out and polish your shoes. So this child one day just came out and said, I would like to give you some advice. So this guy, the trader, he thought, yeah, okay, what advice can a small child give? So back then, some brief introduction about this guy. So he was a very good trader, and he had already invested a lot of his money into a particular stock at that particular point of time, and the stock was making a lot of returns. Now he goes back. We go back to that scenario where this small child was polishing the shoes. He said, I'm not going to take your money, but I'll give you an advice. So our trader, he tells this child, sure, fine, why not? Just give me the advice. So this small kid sitting on the block polishing the shoes tells this trader that I would like you to invest into a particular stock. And the name of the stock was the same stock that this guy had already invested into. The trader had already invested his money, his majority money was in that particular stock. And that was the same recommendation that was given by our shoe polish guy. Now, dumbfounded, our trader goes back to his room. He picks out his broker service or whatever they had, picks out his phone, and immediately sells every holding of that particular stock that he had in his system. Now, I'm not sure if any of the others know in the group know about this particular story, but it goes that after this particular move that he sold, the markets went crazy, right? So in 1929 you had the big crash, and the markets fell like crazy, right? So that was the point he realized that this was a bubble. So the point that I'm making is, when enough people start talking about a particular thing, it more or less becomes a bubble, right? So why I'm very much currently stating that is because currently we have a situation going on in the markets where a lot of people, you'll find a lot of shoe shine guys, a lot of common people out there telling you that, oh, the markets are going to hit another high, they're going to hit another high, right? So you'll see a lot of people coming out and telling you that. And that's why this particular story is of pretty much relevance today, because this guy had this theory that the shoe shine guy, the shoe shine chap right next to your office is going to tell you a recommendation. It's better you get out of that stock, right? Why is that? Because I think enough people already know about that stock and the trade is already over. On that note, I'll start something called Dosa Economics. Now, Dosa Economics, for the uninitiated, was a term coined by our previous RBI governor, the ex-RBI governor Raghuram Rajan, the rock star of the RBI as people know him. So back in, I think this was roughly around 2015, he gave an amazing example of what Dosa Economics exactly was, and he was basically answering a question to people about their interest rates. जो FD होता है हम लोग का. I hope people are fine with Hindi and English both here, so I'll keep on switching between Hindi and English so that everyone understands. So FD जो होता है उसका rate of interest है. ये rate of interest के ऊपर he made a very nice dialogue about how Dosa Economics plays a role there. So his point was this, कि जब हम लोग एफडी में पैसा डालते हैं 10% के हिसाब से हम लोग डाल रहे हैं, मान लीजिए, ठीक है, तो 100 रुपए का आपका आपने डाला 100 रुपए, एक साल बाद वो 110 रुपए हो जाएगा, राइट? तो हिज पॉइंट वाज कि अगर अगले साल इसका रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट कम हो जाता है 10% से वो 8% हो जाता है, बट एट द सेम टाइम you have the inflation rate going down furthermore. Let's say you have the inflation rate, it comes down from, let's say, 7%, 8% down to 4%. So that's a 3.3 percentage ka move hai. In that event, you are still making money. And he explained it using Dosa Economics. He explained how you would still have extra dosas on your plate if you had made this particular investment. So I'll just briefly touch upon that topic, and then we can start with all the other questions and everything else, right? So the first and foremost topic with respect to finance, and you'll hear this term a lot, I want to clear it out because a lot of people are misguided about this particular term. That term is inflation, right? So anyone who wants to just engage right now, do you know what inflation is? Can anyone just answer that question? Maybe one of the organizers also is like, I don't mind.
So when the value of the domestic currency goes down and we have to spend more money for the same things.
Decrease in the purchasing power of money is inflation.
Who was that? Who said this thing? Can you just introduce yourself? Hello. Can you just introduce yourself? Whoever said that.
My name is Akshay and I'm
Yeah, sure. Okay. So Akshay, that's the actual definition of inflation, and that's why it's very important to understand. So a lot of people come out and tell me that inflation is price rise. It is not price rise. It is the decrease in the purchasing power. That point, the words purchasing power matter a lot, right? It's not price rise. Please understand, inflation is not price rise. It is often confused with price rise because price rise is a direct effect of inflation, right? So many people tend to assume that when you look at price rise, oh my god, that there's inflation. It's not inflation. Inflation is something different. Inflation is the cause, price rise is the result, right? So inflation is when your purchasing power, आप जितना खरीद सकते हो, आपकी खरीदने की क्षमता जो होती है ये आपकी कम हो गई है, इसे हम लोग inflation बोलते हैं, right? So let's look at this classic example where where you can buy 3 plates of dosas, right? So you 3 plates of dosas for let's say roughly about $100. So after 1 year, in those same $100, you would get only two plates of dosas. This is a classic example of inflation, right? So inflation is basically when you have lost a decent amount of your purchasing power, right? Now the real rate of return, I'll skip all that part where you need to understand more things about it. I just get to this important point that the real rate of return is basically the rate of return that you're getting out of any of your investments minus the inflation rate. So whenever, let's say, you go to your bank and you place your money at, let's say, 4%, 5%, 4% के आसपास में आपको मिल रहा होगा कोई आपके सेविंग्स बैंक के इस पे, और मान लीजिए उस समय पे इन्फ्लेशन चल रहा है 6%, right? So let's assume 4% is the bank rate and 6% is the inflation rate. So what exactly is happening is you're losing money at the rate of 2%. So at the rate of 2%, you're effectively losing your money. At the end of 1 year, your 100 rupees would now be worth only 98. So this particular thing is very important because people don't generally understand this. They look at an interest rate, they look at a rate of return, and they are very happy about it without understanding that maybe the inflation rate is also high at that point. So always remember that the real rate of return that you're going to fetch, that you're going to get in the markets, is the rate of return minus the inflation rate, right? So now let's look at how banks work, right? So this is the banking system. It's traditionally thought of as a very robust system that we have, but recently, because of the 2008 crisis, because of all those crises that have happened in India as well, Yes Bank, or all those crises that have happened, a lot of people have started to question the banking system, right? So let's understand how the banking system has exactly changed, right? So initially, when you look at the banking system initially, earlier in the earlier days, it would be a three-way street, right? So you had the banks on one side and you had the people on the other side, right? So this particular area is the initial banking system that we had. Now what would happen is the people would make their deposits, right? And the banks would pay an interest rate for this. Let's assume that interest rate is somewhere around 5%. So the bank is paying 5%, right? The bank is paying 5% to the people out there. At the same time, the bank also makes loans, right? So the bank is making loans for the long term. It'll tell you that, okay, fine, you want a house, so I give you a loan of, let's say, 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs for a period of 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, right? And for that loan, I would charge you an interest rate. Now, in the earlier days, the differential between these two interest rates would be the profit of the bank. Meaning that, let's say, if the deposit rate was 5% and the loan rate, the rate at which the loan was given out, was 10%. So the 5% difference of the two is what the bank would actually earn. These are the old days. What is the biggest problem with this system? Again, can anyone just answer that? What according to you is a very big problem with this system? Just having the bank and the end user get it.
You cannot invest money.
What kind of investment are you looking at? Invest money where? Any answers? Any other answers?
There were only deposits of the public and the loan granted by the government by the bank, and after which the public used to repay the bank with interest, and
But then
that's all.
what is the problem with this system? Like, what is the problem with, let's
The public feeling to give the interest in entering into a debt trap.
all right, but that is an issue which still exists in today's date, right? I'm saying the system changed. This particular system, it has changed to something else now, completely different. What is the basic problem with this system that you look at and you realize that if you were a bank, you would not be able to scale up, you would not be able to become big? What would stop you from doing that? So the biggest problem here is, if you look at the loan tenures that you're looking at, right? So the loans that are made, those are for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, meaning those are long-term loans. So for those, let's say 10, 20, 30 years, your money is stuck. There is no way, absolutely no way you can get that money back, because you're going to get payments every month, right? In small packets. These are called EMIs, right? Equated monthly installments. Now, because the loans are for the long term, your money is effectively locked in. Now you cannot get this money, so you cannot make more loans. So effectively speaking, the banks were curtailed from taking any more bets, any more. A loan is effectively a bet on the person, right? So a bank could not generate more and more revenue because their money was effectively locked in. So what did the banks do? The banks changed the way they started banking. So what they would do is, they would pick out investments from a set of people, right? And I'll just call them investment banks. These are not exactly investment banks, but a type of investment banks which basically would pay the bank, right? So the bank would pay them. Now, under the previous system, what would happen is, let's say you are this person, right? Somewhere here, you want a loan, you go to the bank gives you a loan, right? And then there are 10 or 15 or 100 more other people who come to the bank, all of them want a loan, right? Let's say 10 lakhs का एक लोन है, वैसा 10 लोन हमने बना लिया, लगभग 1 करोड़ का लोन हो गया. तो अब 1 करोड़ का जो कैपिटल है, इसे बैंक को फ्री अप करना है. तो बैंक क्या करेगा? बैंक इसी समय पे इन इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंकर्स के पास जाएगा, इन इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक्स के पास जाएगा, उनको बोलेगा कि बॉस, तुम मेरे को पैसा दे दो, ठीक है, तुम मेरे को पैसा दे दो, मैं तुमको जो लोन के रीपेमेंट हो रहे हैं ये तुम्हें दे दूंगा, राइट? आई विल गिव यू द राइट्स, वी कॉल इट राइट्स. I will give you the rights to the loan repayment. So effectively, once the loan is made and the investment is done by the investment bank to the bank, the actual repayments now go to whom? To these investment banks, right? So these investment banks, again, there is a multi-tier approach. They would then go to the markets, they would get an IPO done, they would get more and more investment. But the effective problem of your money being locked in has been solved. How? Because now the bank has enough money, it can go again and make more loans. Next time when it is again, let's say it has made loans again of 1 crore, what it will do is it will again create a rights issue, right? It will come out and say, okay, I have the document, the holder of which would get the rights to all the repayments, right? So जिसने भी जो भी repayment करने वाला है, वो सीधा सीधा मेरे को नहीं करेगा, वो सामने वाले इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक को करेगा. सो अभी ऐसे सिचुएशन में क्या हो रहा है आपका, कि जो भी पैसा आना था वो अब बैंक को नहीं आएगा, अब वो इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक को आएगा. लेकिन बैंक के लिए फायदा ये रहेगा कि जो जितना भी वो एक्सपांड करना चाहता है वो एक्सपांड कर पाएंगे, because they are able to make more and more loans. Now you would ask, how would the bank earn money? Obviously, in this entire transaction, the bank would charge a percentage, right? A very small percentage is charged by the bank, and then for the bank, understand, for the bank, what is the one way to earn money now? For the bank, the one way to earn money is to be aggressive. उनको सीधा सीधा जाके जितने लोन्स बनाने उतने लोन्स बनाने पड़ेंगे. वो इतने अग्रेसिव हो जाएंगे कि सबको लोन देना स्टार्ट कर देंगे. अब फर्स्ट और सेकंड में ध्यान से समझना इस बात को, फर्स्ट और सेकंड में सबसे बड़ा दिक्कत क्या है? फर्स्ट प्रॉब्लम में, फर्स्ट जो हमारे पास सिचुएशन था, वहां पर बैंक पैसा सिर्फ उसी को देगा जो उस पैसे को लौटा पाएगा। बैंक का फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट जो कंडीशन होगा ये वो होगा कि भाई तुम मेरा पैसा लौटा पाओ, तभी आपको ये पैसा मिलेगा। क्यों? क्योंकि रिपेमेंट जो है ये बैंक के पास ही आना है। लेकिन सेकेंड सिचुएशन में जो आज की बैंकिंग इंडस्ट्री है, इसको अगर हम लोग देखते हैं तो व्हाट इज द वन स्टार्क difference that we are seeing is that the repayments are not coming to the bank. The repayments are going to a different entity. And in some way, these repayments, even this entity is not really concerned about these repayments because they have made some other investments through which they can basically get out of these repayment schedules, right? So they are effectively not having the risk. The banks are not having the risk. So effectively, for the bank to make more money, what the bank would now do is go to people and just keep on making loans without even looking at their background. तो जो background है, लोगों का जो background है, whether they can pay back this money or not, goes for a toss, right? That background check goes for a toss. The banks are not checking it. The investment banks are not checking it. Is that clear? So what is now happening is that these repayments are going directly to the investment banks, and that is why there's a lot of risk build up. What is this risk build up? That a lot of these banks are basically making loans to people who cannot pay it back. Something of similar sorts happened in 2008 when the number of people who were actually paying back these amounts reduced drastically. So let's say you had a default rate. Default मतलब लोग पैसा नहीं दे पा रहे, तो 100 में से 9 लोग पैसा नहीं दे पा रहे थे, वो बढ़ के 11 पे पहुंच गए। 2% में पूरा जो फाइनेंशियल सिस्टम है वही टूट गया। This is what happened in 2008 because there were so many loans made and loans के ऊपर भी और betting हुई थी, जिसके वजह से eventually everything came down to the insurance sector and then everything just collapsed. So pretty big flow that we had, right? So this system is not yet changed. The system is still there. There are just a few more checks in between now. But this is a very crude example of how the banks work today. It's not the exact way, but yeah, it's a very crude example. So again, what did I tell you? The money flow is now easier. The banks can make more loans. So they'll obviously start earning more. So that was the premise behind which today's banking sector has actually evolved. Right? Now, these two important points I've mentioned in the beginning so that you understand what exactly is the entire industry. Right? Now let's look at when does a crisis strike. This is something which might interest a lot of you who are willing to learn about finance. Now, just look at the kind of loans that have been made. Right? So the loans are being made. The tenure of those loans are 10 years. Right? In this particular case, the banking today वाला case, जो लोन का जो टेन्योर है, जो आपको पे बैक करना है लोन को, ये 10 साल का है, right? Now the investments that are being made by the investment bank, ये जो investment bank हमारे normal बैंक को जो पैसा दे रहा है, ये short term money होता है. You know, they keep on changing money, meaning they raise money and they give it to the bank, and this keeps on happening. So you understand that the bank is basically borrowing in the short run, in the short term, and lending in the long term. Do you understand this part? So this is very important. This is very key to understand. Now, बैंक्स का आज का जो धंधा है, जो आज का जो उनका काम है, ये पूरी तरह चेंज हो चुका है. They are short term borrowers and long term lenders. Right? Please understand this term. They are short term borrowers, long term lenders. तो अब बैंक्स क्या करते हैं? शॉर्ट टर्म में पैसा बोरो करते हैं और उसी पैसे का लोन बना के लॉन्ग टर्म में देते हैं. ठीक है? So how does the bank earn money? Today, for the bank to earn money, the short term interest rate, मतलब ये जो इन्वेस्टमेंट उसे मिल रहा है, इसका जो इंटरेस्ट रेट होगा should be lower than the loan that it is making. So अगर मान लो ये यहाँ पर उसे 1 करोड़ मिल गया 2% पे, तो यहाँ जो 1 करोड़ के लोन सब बनाएगा वो रफली 2 से ऊपर ही होना चाहिए, तब जाके पैसा कमाएगा. Right. So I'll repeat that statement again. So whatever the investment bank is giving the loans to the bank, to our original bank, मान लो ये जो इन्वेस्टमेंट दे रहा है वो 2% पे दे रहा है, तो ये जो बैंक है, ये जो लोन बनाएगा लोगों के लिए, उसे 2% से ज्यादा में ही बनाना पड़ेगा. तो दिस पर्टिकुलर एस्पेक्ट जहां पर हमारा शॉर्ट टर्म बोरोइंग का इंटरेस्ट रेट और लॉन्ग टर्म बोरोइंग का इंटरेस्ट रेट में ये जो डिफरेंस आता है, ये बैंक का प्रॉफिट है. राइट? इसे हम लोग क्या कहते हैं? यील्ड डिफरेंशियल. क्या कहते हैं? Yield differential. It's a very crude explanation that I've given you. It is not the exact explanation, but in very simple terms, what I'm trying to tell you is for the bank to make money, its short-term interest rate should be lower than the long-term interest rate. Is that clear? right? So now let's understand how the economy would function, because now why did we go to banking immediately? Because banks are the major places where money flows. जो मनी फ्लो है वो पूरा का पूरा बैंक से ही होता है, बिकॉज वो बैंक से ही होने वाला है, तो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट जो एस्पेक्ट है विद रिस्पेक्ट टू इकोनॉमिक्स एंड इकोनॉमी are the banks, right? So now let's say if the short term interest rate, the investment जो दे रहा है उसने 2% से बढ़ा के 3% कर दिया, और जो लोन का जो रेट है वो अभी भी 5% पे है रफली, वो इतने जल्दी चेंज होगा नहीं। तो 5% पे बैंक जो है ये सामने लोन देते जा रहा है, और उसे जो पैसा मिल रहा है इन्वेस्टमेंट बैंक से, that is at 3% instead of the earlier 2%. So do you see what has happened? Now the bank is losing its earlier profit. So जो पहले जो कमा रहा था वो 3% पे कमा रहा था, अब वो 2% पे कमा रहा है. Now let's increase this further to 5%. Now the investment banks are providing the entire short-term money to the banks at 5%, right? So these guys are providing the bank at an investment rate of 5%, and the bank in turn is providing loans at 5%. Right? You'll ask me why are they doing it? Because market में जल्दी change नहीं होगा चीजें. तो loans में let's say one is making at 5%, the other cannot go out and say, oh, I'll make it at 6%, because there's a direct competition there, right? So what exactly is happening is, at this particular juncture, the bank has stopped making money. Please understand this carefully. At this particular juncture, the bank has now stopped making any money. Any further rise in the short-term interest rate, अगर ये जो शॉर्ट टर्म में जो इंटरेस्ट रेट है इसमें एनी फर्दर राइज अगर हुआ, तो द बैंक्स विल इफेक्टिवली स्टार्ट मेकिंग लॉसेस. I hope you understand this part. If you don't, please stop me, please ask me, you're free to do that, right? So what did I tell you? At this particular point, when the short-term interest rate is equal to the long-term interest rate, what is happening is the bank is not making money, and any further rise in the short-term interest rate would effectively deal a very big blow to the bank's profitability. Now, why is this so important? Why am I stressing on this so much, right? So there is this particular instrument in banking sector, right? Bonds. So the bonds are basically made out in such a way that they are showing you what is the interest rate for that particular tenure. For example, if a bond has a tenure of 10 years, तो इट इज इफेक्टिवली टेलिंग यू कि 10 साल के लिए आप अगर एक लोन लोगे तो उसका इंटरेस्ट रेट क्या रहेगा. आज से स्टार्ट करते हुए 10 साल के लिए आपने लोन लिया तो उसका इंटरेस्ट रेट क्या रहेगा, ये वो आपको बॉन्ड बता रहा है. ठीक है, तो आपके पास ऐसे दो इंस्ट्रूमेंट मान लीजिए, एक है 3 महीने का बॉन्ड और एक है 10 साल का बॉन्ड. 3 महीना आपके लिए शॉर्ट टर्म हो गया, 10 साल जो हो गया वो लॉन्ग टर्म हो गया. अगर 3 महीने का रेट 5% चल रहा है, राइट, और 10 साल का रेट भी 5% चल रहा है, तो इफेक्टिवली क्या बता रहा है, ये बता रहा है कि बैंक के पास प्रॉफिटेबिलिटी नहीं है. नाउ दिस इज वेरी इजीली रिकॉग्नाइजेबल. दिस पर्टिकुलर थिंग happens in the market. It is very easily recognizable, right? So what happens is, every time in the US, when the 3-month 10-year differential of these two bonds goes in the negative, मतलब आपका जो 3 month का जो interest rate है ये 10 year से बढ़ गया है, a crisis has followed. So 9 out of 10 times a crisis is followed in the last 30-40 years. So you understand the mechanics, what is happening, right? So the banks would now become what? They'll become loss-making entities, and because they are now loss-making entities, what would happen is they would now have to stop their business. They would stop giving out enough loans, and because they stop giving out enough loans, whatever the progress that you are making as an economy, it is going to stop, because banks are the one which effectively ensure that the money is flowing. Right? So what will happen now? Because the banks have now stopped giving out loans to, like, as they were giving out earlier, the economy will come to a standstill. You will see a crisis happening. So almost every time this particular event happens, economists across the world will follow it. They'll tell you that a crisis is about to happen. Right? They might be wrong, no doubt, but definitely it's something which even the central banks मतलब RBI हो गया, फेडरल रिजर्व हो गया, जो सेंट्रलाइज्ड बैंक्स जो होते हैं, सेंट्रल बैंक जो है, कंट्री का जो बैंक है जो पैसा देता है बाकी बैंक्स को, वो ये एक पर्टिकुलर चीज को बहुत ध्यान से दिखता है कि आपका यील्ड कर्व का जो इन्वर्जन है, इसे हम क्या बोलते हैं, यील्ड कर्व इन्वर्जन, जहां पे शॉर्ट टर्म इंटरेस्ट रेट का वैल्यू लॉन्ग टर्म इंटरेस्ट रेट से ज्यादा हो गया. ऐसे सिचुएशन में आपका जो इकोनॉमी है इसमें क्राइसिस आने का चांसेस बहुत बढ़ जाता है. So they like everyone follows this particular thing a lot. So keep an eye on this. If you get the chance, it's a pretty amazing thing to look at also. Right? Let's go to the next part. Now this is something which like I would call it the difference of the masses. जो हम लोग क्लास और मास का जो स्ट्रगल रहा है थ्रू आउट हिस्ट्री, जहां पर भी आप देखते हो कि आपके पास 3 तरह के जो क्लासेस है, ये इन्हें फाइनेंशियली हम डिफाइन करने की कोशिश करते हैं. ठीक है. So the first is the rich class, the second is the middle class, and the third is the poor class, right? And according to which class you belong, you would always feel somewhere or the other you are being punished. If you are in the rich class, you will say, oh, my taxes are very high, so the government is punishing me. If you are in the middle class, both sides, right? So you're being punished by both ends. You're having a lot of inflation, and you have to pay a lot of money as taxes as well. If you're the poor, obviously your life is bad anyway. So all the 3 classes, no matter who is in it, they'll always keep on complaining that things are not good, right? But then we'll just keep a very strong, we'll keep a very decent enough differentiation between these 3 classes. Let's understand that. So the first class, it will grow money by making smarter investments. I'll define what smarter investments is. A smart investment is something which pays you more than the market is paying you. Right? A smart investment is something which pays you more than what the market is paying you. Let's say Nifty today. Nifty is just an index. Just think about it. That is an index that you have. Now Nifty is making 50%. मतलब आप 100 रुपए डालते हो निफ्टी में, तो वो अगले एक साल बाद 150 रुपए हो गए. ठीक है. If it is making you 150 bucks, which is 50% का आपको गेन मिल रहा है, and your investment is making 60%. So effectively you have made a smarter investment. Because of these smarter investments, they are able to grow their money. Please look at the words that I'm using. They are able to grow their money. Grow is a very important word here, because they are able to grow it. वो सिर्फ पैसा रखे रहते नहीं है, वो सेव नहीं करते पैसे को, वो उसके साथ साथ what do? They grow it. What is the next case? The next case is they also have access to smarter investments. Why is that so? Because obviously they have access to a lot of capital. उनके पास पैसा भी ज्यादा होता है, तो smarter investments भी ज्यादा मिलेंगे. It will be tailor made for them. Because they have so much money, banks are willing to change their terms and conditions for them, right? And the final thing is that the investments that they do many a times are riskier also, and because they are riskier, there is a significant return on investment. क्योंकि वहां पर risk ज्यादा है, and I'll define risk in the next slide. Because the risk is higher, it leads to a significant return on investment. उनके पास जो return आ रहा है उनके पास वो ज्यादा होता है. Now let's look at the second class that we have, and this I'm assuming that most of the Indians are actually belong to somewhere around this class. Either you'll be the upper middle class or the lower middle class. So this is something which would actually go through your mind, most of you actually. So they take safer bets. The first and foremost thing is they'll take safer bets. If you want one example of that, go and ask your fathers, go and ask your mothers, go and ask your parents where they put their money, and they'll tell you कि हमने PF में डाला, हमने fixed deposit में डाला. Right? So why do they do that? Because it's a safer bet, right? So inflation leads to capital erosion. जो उनके पास पैसा है, इस पे inflation का direct मार पड़ता है. तो inflation क्यों मार पड़ रहा है इन लोगों को? क्योंकि they are not able to grow their money. What they are right now doing is they are just trying to beat inflation. तो वो लोग फिक्स्ड डिपॉजिट में डाल देते हैं, जहां पर क्या एकदम ही सेफ रहता है, मतलब डिफॉल्ट का चांस कम है, पैसा आपको समय पे वापस मिल जाएगा. लेकिन इस ये जो आपने रिस्क कम उठाया है, इसकी आपको भरपाई रिटर्न से करनी पड़ती है. तो बिकॉज द रिस्क इज सो लो, व्हाट विल हैपन इज द रिटर्न्स विल आल्सो बी लो, राइट? सो द नेक्स्ट पार्ट इज दे हैव लिमिटेड एक्सेस टू कैपिटल. मोस्ट ऑफ देम आर ऑन सैलरीज, सो दैट इज द ओनली एक्सेस टू कैपिटल दैट दे जनरली हैव. This next part is actually what defines their behavior towards markets. They are extremely against markets. A lot of you, this includes my parents as well, a lot of you are wary of markets. So when I first came into this particular segment, a lot of my relatives, they use the word dalal. ठीक है, dalal. I'm really sorry to use that word, but they use this word. And it's funny because that word is looked up as a very bad word. Like in the Indian context, people look at this particular word as very negative, right? They'll come out and they'll tell you, "जुआ खेल रहे हो यार तुम." जुआ खेल रहे हो, right? So these are things which have effectively put an irrational fear of markets, right? तो जो markets है इसका एक बहुत ही irrational fear होता है इन सारे लोगों में, जो मिडिल क्लास फैमिलीज हैं इनमें काफी ज्यादा fear होता है, इसलिए वो लोग क्या करते हैं, they'll always go for instruments which have very low return of investment, right? So what effectively happens is they are not able to beat inflation also. And finally, this again very important part, loans on depreciating assets. Now what do I mean by depreciating asset? You take a loan on an asset that is losing its value the moment you have taken that loan. Let's look at a car, for example. The moment you buy the car, it has already lost about 20% of its value. You cannot sell it at the market price now, including the taxes. So effectively 20% is already lost the moment you buy the car. On top of that, what are you doing? You are taking a loan. So that is the case of a loan on depreciating asset. You take a car loan to buy a car. So the car, once it is out of the showroom, it loses 20% of its value anyway. Over the entire year, it will lose another 10%, let's say. So let's say if tomorrow you were to sell that car, you will get hardly 70% at the end of 1 year. I'm taking a conservative bet here. Now, on top of that, because there is a loan going on, you are already paying roughly about 10 to 12% on that loan. So do you understand the point that I'm making? So you are basically trying to take a loan on a depreciating asset. The asset is not going to appreciate. That particular asset, a car, is not going to appreciate in its value. Yet you take a loan. So this is one very important characteristic of the middle class, that they'll always take loans on depreciating assets. And for this again, go back to your fathers, go back to your mothers, and you'll see a lot of them doing the same mistake. And I don't blame them for that. Please don't get me wrong. I don't blame them for that. There is a particular reason which I'll talk about in about 2-3 minutes once we discuss the poor class. The final class that we have, they almost have no investments of their own, right? So their liabilities exceed their assets. What are their liabilities? The first liability is the child. Now, sad to say this, but this is the condition, right? So most of the poor class out there, they'll have children, and then the children that they have, because they are poor, they cannot sustain it, right? So the child also leads a very bad life. So the liabilities that they always will be having are generally higher than the assets that they can have. Liability मतलब जो चीज तुम्हें drag down कर रही है. Liabilities मतलब तुम्हें उसको payment you owe someone money basically. Assets is something which you can sell in the future to gain some wealth. Now the one way that actually the poor class survives in India especially is the state support. मतलब government support होता है, उनके day to day activities के लिए support देता है. All those yojanas that you hear about in the government are mostly doing this. Minimal, I would rather change it to no access to capital. They have almost no access to capital. They have no access to credit. They have no access to loans. So they have no access to capital, right? And finally, negative ROI. Whatever they have given out, they have a negative ROI. The prime example of this is your farm sector. Primary example. It will be on loans, right? So they'll take a loan to invest into the farm sector, and the loans will not be from a government bank, because it's very difficult to get that kind of a loan for people who don't have that kind of a support system. So what happens is they pay a lot of interest rate on that loan, and that interest rate will never match the actual growth in the agricultural progress that they would make. So effectively they would have a negative rate of investment, and because the inflation is also high, there will be a significant erosion of capital. So these are the three basic classes that I have actually bifurcated, differentiated in terms of their financial know-how, in terms of their financial life. Now you need to understand that there is another kind of a differentiation here, and that differentiation is actually with respect to the generations. So what is this particular differentiation? If you look at your parents, what is the one thing that the parents didn't have? The parents generally didn't have money. So most of the parents out there in India, you must be coming from if you're coming from a middle class family, if you're coming from a poor family, you would hear these stories that, oh, we survived in a one hut house, in a one room house. My parents also survived in a one room house. So those things, what do they tell you? The first and foremost thing that they tell you is, the one thing that they did not have at all was what? Money. So every time they would get money, they would try to store it. They would try to save it. Now let's look at the other thing that they had in abundance. What was the other thing that they had in abundance? It was time. So always, if you look at these two things, our our forefathers, from the middle class, from the poor class rather, both of them, they never had that kind of money, so they would save it, and they had a lot of time, so they would more often than not try to waste it, right? They would put it. I should not use the word waste, but they would try to put it into activities which would not give them. And everything that I'm saying is in terms of financials that a particular family would have. So these people would always, what would happen is they would have a lot of time, so they would rather put their time in non-performing assets or non-performing activities, right? So that is the primary reason why many of your parents and everyone, they'll come out to you and they'll tell you, oh, you should always put your money in fixed deposits, you should put your money in PFs, you should provident funds basically, you should put your money in all those yojanas that the government gets you, many things out there, right? So those are things which are very safe. You would not lose your money, and they would then pass on that irrational fear into their ward's mind, which is something which has been happening in the current setup in the country as well. Now, very recently has this particular thing changed, at least because of social media. In the last 10 years, we are seeing a very high rate of growth with respect to, let's say, demat accounts or all those things. But that is still very less, very, very less, right? So now we go on to the next part. Credit equals loan, broker equals dalal. तो ये मैं जो बता रहा हूँ, ये please don't take it negatively. I'm not trying to put out a statement which is derogatory in any terms. I'm just trying to tell you how the two societies think. So you have one society which is the US society, the second society which is the Indian society. The specific word that is used for money given to someone in the US is credit. Please listen to this carefully. The word that is used is credit. The same thing in India is called a loan. Now let's look at what a broker is called. So a broker is basically a broker, a clearer or a broker in US. That same person in India is called a dalal. Now what is the one thing that you see here? That whenever you are looking at the markets, right, loan making, any financial thing, the society in India has a kind of a negative feeling towards it. So they'll always have this. So think about it. Credit is such a positive word. So the society in the US, they also have a very big problem, by the way. So they almost always think that it is their right to have credit. Please understand this. उनको ये लगता है कि मेरे को तो पैसा मिलना ही चाहिए, मेरा हक है वो. India it is the opposite. If you make a loan, the first thing that they'll think is, oh, I have a headache on my head now. तो मेरे को वो लोन वापस चुकता करना पड़ेगा, वो पैसा वापस देना है, यही सोचते रहेंगे, right? So both these societies in turn have their problems. One is extremely positive, which creates a lot of big crisis for them. The second is extremely negative, which does not create enough growth for them. Now, if you look at the broker and the dalal thing, that is the primary reason why people in India have actually stayed away from the markets. They would never go into the markets because that word itself is so negative. Dalali. Right? Even a stock exchange is the street that we go on to is called Dalal Street. So you get it, right? So it's very difficult in India to achieve something of that sort with respect to financial literacy, because the way we have been thinking, and obviously it is slowly changing now, it should ideally change to something in between, but we are very thankful that it is happening. But the primary problem here is that as a society, we tend to think of finance as a very negative thing. We tend to think of everything in terms of state support, in terms of, negative finance. Anything that is really closely related to markets, we would say, oh, this is not for me, this is something which is wrong. I'm sure many of you must have seen these examples at play in your houses. I have personally seen that happening in my house as well. So it's not something which I'm just saying out of thin air. It's my own personal experience as well, right? So let's now look at another important concept. And this is probably one of the most important concepts. Someone before I was just checking the chats earlier, and I'm really sorry. I'm just pointing it out. This is nothing to do with the person. It's pretty funny. That person's name was Harshad Mehta. Probably they had put their name in the chat in a group right now. So this person's name is Harshad Mehta. He had actually mentioned that slogan, right? Risk hai to ishq lala. So वो बोला था वो वहाँ पर chat में लिखा था. I was actually laughing at that before starting this particular thing because I had already mentioned it in this particular chapter. So the concept of risk and reward. So what is risk? Let me define risk for you. Risk is the standard deviation of your returns. Please understand this very carefully. Risk का मतलब ये नहीं होता है कि जो risk बोल के निकल रहा है ना सब लोग कि risk है. What is exactly risk? I'm quantifying it. I'm putting a mathematical term to it. The standard deviation of your returns. Right? अगर आपका एक रिटर्न है जो कि 1% है, दूसरा रिटर्न है जो कि 3% है, तीसरा रिटर्न है जो कि 2% है, आपका एवरेज हुआ 2%, राइट? आपका एवरेज कितना हुआ 2%. अब एक चौथा रिटर्न आता है वो 5% है, तो आपका स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन कितना हो गया 3%, 5 - 2, राइट? तो ये आपका रिस्क हो गया क्योंकि ये 5% ऊपर गया. अगर मान लो 5% नीचे भी जा सकता है, राइट? तो अगर मान लो 5% यहां से नीचे चला गया, 2% से 5% कितना हुआ, राइट? तो कितना चला गया अब ये 5 और 2 7% नीचे, तो आपका स्टैंडर्ड डेविएशन अगेन इट हैज इंक्रीज्ड. So the standard deviation of your returns is called risk. So what it also tells you is that while the risk increases, आप जब risk बढ़ाते हो, ठीक है, तो the chances of having a higher return also diminishes. Why? Because कभी भी ऐसा नहीं होता है. अब एक क्रिकेटर है, मान लो उसने एक मैच में सेंचुरी मारा, चलो अगले मैच में सेंचुरी मारा, थर्ड मैच में तो रुक जाएगा ना, थर्ड मैच में मार लिया, फोर्थ टाइम तो रुक जाएगा. ये ऐसा तो नहीं होगा कि कंटिन्यूसली मारता रहेगा. But at the same time, a cricketer can have a higher chance of hitting a 30 or a 40 as opposed to hitting a 100 consecutive matches में. अब कैसे क्रिकेटर है, मान लो विराट कोहली कंटिन्यूसली 50 के ऊपर तो मारता ही है, राइट? लेकिन 100 के ऊपर मारना in the last 2 years has been difficult for this person. So then you understand that to hit that particular, to go that extra distance, he has to take an extra risk. That risk might entail a particular shot, a particular way of playing, right? I don't know how many of you have actually heard this interview. So there was this particular interview when Sachin used to get out in the 90s, and I'm from the 90s batch, so I would know a lot about these things. Sachin used to get out on 90s. There was this one time when I think his son or his daughter had told him that why don't you just hit a 6 when you're on 94? Now the thing with hitting a 6 is, obviously, you would reach 100. You would reach your return. Please understand this. You would reach your return. But what is the risk that you take? The risk while hitting a 6 is very high. So because the risk is so high, the return is also going to be higher. I hope this thing is ingrained in your heads now and you understand what I'm trying to tell you. So the next time someone chants "Risk hai to ishq hai," literally play out the Scam 1992 theme music to let them know that they are being scammed. रिस्क है तो इश्क है बोलना आसान है, बट उसमें जो रिस्क है ना उसमें लगती भी उतनी है, ठीक है? तो जो रिस्क ले रहे हो आप, ये ऐसा नहीं है कि जितना आप रिस्क लेते तो उतना लेते चले जाओ. An ideal investment would always carry an average risk and give decent ROI, return on investment. अगर उसी तरह आप सक्सेसफुल ट्रेडर्स को देखोगे, लोग बोलते हैं कि ट्रेडर जो है वो बहुत ही हाई रिस्क रहता है. Trust me, I have seen multiple successful traders in my life. None of them, I can vouch my life on this fact. None of them have actually gone for a higher risk unless they are guaranteed a higher return. They will never try to increase their risk. They will always try to decrease it. They will always try to decrease their risk for the same amount of return that they can generate. Please don't get me wrong. They are not trying to reduce their returns. They are trying to reduce their risk to have the same amount of return, or rather a higher amount of return. So this particular trade-off that you are looking at, कि risk और return में जो trade-off होता है, ये trade-off बहुत key है. Very important to understand why this trade-off has to be there. This trade-off is very important because across all our societies, the biggest problem has been not taking enough risk. Right? So people mostly come out and they'll not take enough risk. They'll go for the safer instruments because they have this ill-conceived notion that, oh, my money is safe. But what did we understand in the first case? That your inflation is anyway killing you. So the inflation is anyway reducing the returns that you're seeing by almost 6.5% in India, at least if you're right. So please remember this thing, that पैसा safe होने का मतलब ये नहीं होता है कि आपका पैसा आपको राइट लास्ट में मिल जाएगा. 100 रुपए आज 100 रुपए दे रहे हो, 10 साल बाद 100 रुपए की कोई वैल्यू नहीं होगी. राइट. तो ये बात ध्यान में रखना बहुत जरूरी है. Let's now go to the next segment. So now what is the actual reason that we need to have a financial education in place? The total demat accounts at the end of 2020, and mind you, this was one of the best, it was the best year with respect to markets. It was the best year with respect to demat accounts because a lot of people, because of the pandemic, were sitting at their homes. All they did was, they came up with new demat accounts or वो demat account में trade करना start किया. The total demat accounts at the end of 2020 was somewhere around 40.8 million, and still that's roughly 2.5 to 3% of the population. इंडिया का roughly 2.5 to 3%. अगर वर्किंग क्लास की बात करते हैं तो वर्किंग क्लास लगभग 350 मिलियन के आसपास होगा इंडिया में. तो उस हिसाब से 1.5% के आसपास का वर्किंग क्लास के पास डीमैट अकाउंट्स. You understand, the one class which has the ability to take risk, the working class is getting a salary, so they effectively have the ability to take risk. They are the ones who actually are not taking it at all. You compare it with US, there's a 50% penetration, over 50%. Now it has gone beyond 60 actually. So there is a 50-60% penetration of demat accounts. So a lot more people are actually into Wall Street. They are actually into trading. And for all the reasons that I provided above, this is the result that we are seeing. What is the result? The result is that we don't have enough penetration. People, despite seeing that they can grow their money over time, they are not ready to take that risk. That small amount of risk that would guarantee them some extra money. They want to save their money at the peak of their careers. To save your money at the end of your career, let's say when you want to retire or something, is a different case. That is something which is sound, which is understandable. But to save it when you're 25, when you're 21, 23, 30, 35, even 40, to try to save it rather than trying to grow it is the one particular reason why financial education in India is not enough, is the one particular reason why financial literacy is not there, is the one particular reason that Indians have still not come out of that safety net that the state government or the states provide. States meaning the government provides. Right? So now let's look at the other aspects. Financial freedom, what is it? Let's unlock our potential. Let's understand what financial freedom entails. Right? So what is financial freedom? You have adequate protection from risks, from health or otherwise. Any risk that you're talking about. Whether it is your default, मतलब तुमने किसी से लोन लिया, वो लोन वापस चुकता नहीं कर पाए, तो उस डिफॉल्ट के लिए तुम्हारे पास पैसा है क्या? रिस्क, हेल्थ, किसी दिन किसी का गॉड फॉरबिड किसी का एक्सीडेंट हो गया, they are permanently damaged, they are permanently disabled. Can you take care of your family at that point? If you can, you have financial freedom. If you cannot, you're in a mess. Health insurance, life insurance, adequate protection from inflation. Please understand, inflation. जब आपका inflation ही 6% पे है, तो आपका जो investment है, this has to grow more than 6%. As simple as that. It cannot grow less than 6%, else you are losing money. Optimum risk reward ratios. Like putting your money for 15 years. For 15 years in the PF account is actually terrible risk reward. For 15 years, you are locking that money forever for 15 years in that account. When you need it the most, you are not going to get it. Right? So putting it in a PF, it might seem a very good idea to a lot of you, but let me tell you something, it has a lock-in period of 15-20 years. 15-20 years ke liye, you're going to have that money stuck there. Just doesn't make sense. And the PF might give you an 8% interest rate, great. But if the market is giving you 50% in a particular year and the PF is giving you just 8%, understand that you're making a terrible loss. Right? Adequate protection from for near and dear ones in your absence. Let's say, God forbid, you are killed, you are dead. Some in this situation, a lot of you might have been going through, and God help you during these times. But adequate protection for your near and dear ones in your absence. When you are not there, they should not suffer because of it. Now, this means that they should be able to continue with their standard of living even when you're not there. Right? Finally, now let's try to understand how do you achieve financial freedom. First thing, plan your salary. The thumb rule that I have for this, and this is something which has stuck with me for the last 7.5 years now, the time since I started working. You plan your salary. How do you do it? Consider yourself and सोच लो कि कितने एज का तुम जीना चाहते हो. Let's say you are going to live till 100, right? And you are aged right now at 24, 25. Let's assume it's 25. So just divide these two numbers. So 25 by 100, 25% of all your investments should be in safe assets. The remaining 75 should be in risky ones. Risky meaning markets, stocks, mutual funds, so on and so forth. Safe assets meaning fixed deposits, PFs, or whatever you want to put it in. Now, as and when your age increases, the amount of safe money that you want to preserve also increases. Let's say you're 50 now. 50% now goes into what? Into preserving your wealth. Not growing it, preserving it. What is preserving? Putting it in fixed income assets, bonds, fixed deposits, recurring deposits, PFs. At the same time, 50% is going into what? Into still riskier assets, into stocks. Now your age is 60. So now the percentage is slowly increasing towards saving your money as opposed to growing it. The growing period is over. So this age rule is what guides me. Generally, that is how I plan my salary also. Insurance. Please, this statement is very important. I have seen my friends, I have seen people who are younger than me make this mistake over and over countless times again. And insurance is an insurance. Please understand that it is not an investment. It should provide you only with insurance. The one thing that the insurance companies with respect to India, especially LIC, have done is created something called an endowment plan. What is an endowment plan? An endowment plan is something like LIC का वो जीवन सुरक्षा plan वो सब जो होता है ना वो सब endowment plans. What are these plans? So they'll take your money at the end of 20 years, they'll return you your money. That is not insurance, that is an investment. And for that matter, it is an extremely poor investment. Why? Because at the end of 10 or 20 years, the sum assured will hardly be 20 lakhs. And 20 lakhs is nothing. Think about it. 10-15 years ago, 1,000 rupees was a very big amount. Today, is it a big amount? It's not. 10,000 rupees was a very big amount. It's not. Today, we talk about lakhs. 10-15 years down the line, lakhs would be a very small amount. That is effectively inflation. Right? So, whenever you are choosing your insurance plans, go for a term plan. Please understand this thing. Go for a term plan. A plan which makes you pay money but does not give you anything in return except for insurance. It is very simple. What is the term plan? It tells you that you pay me something, let's say 500-600 bucks per month. And let's say in that entire tenure, if you, God forbid, die, your family gets 1 crore, 2 crore, whatever the amount is. If you don't die, good for you, we are not paying you back the amount. Now, why am I telling you that this is a better thing to do? Let's look at this example, right? So the example goes like this. For an endowment plan per year, you need to pay roughly about 70 to 80,000. And the return that you would get is something about 20 lakhs or 25 lakhs, not more than that. Let's say for 10-20 years का इंश्योरेंस दे दिया तुमने, उसमें आपको 20 साल के बाद जो सम अश्योर्ड है वो 20 लाख का है. ठीक है, अब 20 लाख का जो सम अश्योर्ड है इसमें आप कितना हर साल पे कर रहे हो? चलो 80,000 60,000 मान लो. अब वहीं आपको अगर नॉर्मल टर्म प्लान की बात करते हैं तो क्या होगा? टर्म प्लान में यू पे 500-600 bucks अ मंथ. जा जाके कितना हो? 7-8 हजार के आसपास होगा साल का. तो 7-8,000 you pay in a year. And if you die, how much do you get? You get 1 crore. Now let's look at what you could do. you're paying 7-8,000. You had 60,000. In one case, you pay the entire 60,000 for an endowment plan, and it gives you how much? It gives you hardly 6.5%. 80,000 का 20 लाख तक बन गया, वो 6.5% है, compounded year on year. At the same time, you look at a different situation. What is that situation? Instead of this 60,000, you pay 7,000 towards a term loan. So what is the insurance now that you get? You get 1 CR ka insurance, 1 crore ka insurance. And the remaining 55,000 or 52,000, whatever it is, you pay it into the markets. You get it into the markets. Or let's say any other investment for that sake, even a PF, it will still pay you 8%. Rather, you go for anything that is paying you at least 10%. And then you compare both these, and you will see that that actually the plan that a term plan plus the investment made into the markets does is it helps you grow your money, and it makes you enough. It gives you enough insurance. How do you calculate how much insurance should you need? Please understand that also. You are in that phase where very soon many of you would start having salaries. So this thing is something which is very important. The first thing you do is you go and buy insurance. First thing, term insurance. How do you decide how much term insurance has to be bought? Should you buy 50 lakhs ka term insurance? The sum insured is 50 lakhs. Or you buy 1 crore ka, or you buy 2 crore ka. That depends on how much you are earning currently, what is your lifestyle, and how much liabilities you have. Let's say you have a home loan of 25 lakhs. When you die, your family, your near and dear ones, God forbid you die, your near and dear ones should be able to make that payment without having to crush their own life. So your insurance should take care of that. So if you have a 25 lakhs ka loan, and let's say you have a salary of 25,000, 30,000, मतलब सालाना 6 लाख 7 लाख के आसपास की सैलरी है, the average salary. Effectively, a 1 CR insurance would effectively be very helpful for you in the event of your unfortunate death, because then your family would not have to pay money out of their own pockets, which many more often than not, we are being the sole bread earners, it might be a very difficult case for them. Right? So please keep that in mind. Insurance is probably one of the most misread assets, I would say. Please understand that it is an insurance, it is not an investment. For investment, you go to mutual funds, you go to all these other classes which give you a lot of returns. Don't go to an insurance, right? Loans only on appreciating assets. What are appreciating assets? Two things that come to my mind. The first is education. What does education do? It helps you increase your salary more often than not. So effectively saying, taking a loan on education is good. The second is home loan. Why is home loan important? Because home is a piece of land. It is an appreciating asset. More often than not, the value of that land is going to increase. So let's say if it increases by 10% and your home loan is at 8%, 8.5%. So what would happen is you would still end up making 2%. At the same time, you will have some sizable asset on your plate. If you take that same thing onto a car, which we had earlier discussed, what would happen? You're losing out money both ways. So don't do that. Plan your activity. If you want to buy a car 2 years later, plan it. That okay, I want to buy a car 2 years later. So every month I should make so and so amounts into, let's say, a fixed deposit, into a recurring deposit, into the markets, into a mutual fund, whatever the case may be. But at least plan it. It will help you a lot. Then comes the primary rule, the one rule that I've actually, in practice, I have been following for the last 7 years. You pay your EMIs first, then your savings next, and then spend whatever you want to. It helps me a lot. I'll tell you why. Because one, EMI is something which is a liability. If you don't pay your EMIs, your credit score is going to go down. So don't do that. So pay the EMIs first. Then put your money into savings. थाली जितनी बड़ी होगी उतना ज्यादा इंसान खाएगा. थाली छोटी कर दो, इंसान कम खाएगा. तो आपकी थाली पहले कम कर दो, आप सेविंग्स में पैसे डाल दो. उससे क्या होगा? आपके पास खर्चा करने को ही कम पैसे हैं. इसका मतलब ये नहीं है that you don't go out for your regular holidays, you don't enjoy that. This is the time when you enjoy your life. So don't think that I'm asking you not to enjoy. I'm just saying that you make your savings first, you make your EMIs first, and then you enjoy. In fact, what you can go one step further and do is, if you want to go to let's say a trip to Europe, a trip to anywhere else in the world, which might cost you something, you plan for it. The next important line, credit lines. Credit lines is a credit card. आपके पास एक क्रेडिट कार्ड होना चाहिए, लेकिन इसे कैसे यूज करना है ये भी ध्यान से समझो. Credit card is one of the most powerful instrument. There is no other instrument which gives you 50 days of no interest loans. No other instrument gives you that. 50 days आपके पास रहेगा जहां पर आप जो आप खरीदना चाहते हो खरीद सकते हो, और आपको उस चीज के उस लोन के लिए आपको पेमेंट नहीं करना पड़ेगा, एक्स्ट्रा पेमेंट नहीं करना पड़ेगा. But what are some important things that you need to understand while looking at credit cards? The first and foremost thing, never ever withdraw your money from a credit card. Meaning, do not go to your ATM and swipe the cards. The interest rate that they would charge you to do that is criminal. Is not high, it is criminal. So don't do that. They'll charge you 17-18% minimum. Never, there's something called minimum account due. Ignore that completely. Do not look at minimum account dues. That is just a marketing gimmick. Pay your credit card bills completely. Do not pay just the minimum account due. Pay the entire amount that you owe them on time. If you do that, it's a very good thing. Why? Because what does the minimum account due do actually? So the minimum account due is there just so that it does not impact your credit score. But what does it do in return? They charge you an interest rate now. And again, that is criminal. That is beyond criminal now. At least 35% interest rate लगता है. No other instrument would charge you that much. So never default on your payments for a credit card. Always pay it on time. Right? Uske baad you have all those point systems and everything. So do you understand? So there is one final rule that I always use. For your credit score, the one very important thing to understand, please understand this part, is the amount of credit that you have used out of how much amount you are actually guaranteed. Let's say your credit card limit is 1 lakh. So if you are using a credit limit of 1 lakh, 1 lakh में से आपने अगर 25,000 यूज किया, आपका क्रेडिट यूटिलाइजेशन हुआ 25%. आपने 30,000 यूज किया तो 30%. You keeping it somewhere between 20 to 30% is the ideal amount. 20 to 30, maximum 35%. 50 से ऊपर कभी उसको यूज करना नहीं. This will impact your credit score badly. The moment you do that, your credit score goes down, and it will be difficult for you to get a loan in future. So don't do that. Maintaining a credit card is very important. Why is it important? Because it also improves your credit score. Please understand this. A bank gets to know about your credit pattern. The credit rating agencies get to know about your credit pattern. कि तुम पैसा देने लायक हो या नहीं. अगर तुमको पैसा दिया तो तुम वापस कर रहे हो या नहीं. अगर तुम पैसा वापस कर रहे हो तो बैंक के लिए ज्यादा गारंटी है. Bank will understand that yes, your history is good. We can give you more loans. Is that clear? So to improve your credit utilization, what do you do? Every time they ask you to increase the credit limit on your credit card, it's not a marketing gimmick, just increase it. Why is that important? Because 1 लाख के ऊपर आपने अगर 25,000 रुपए खर्च किए तो आपका 25% का यूटिलाइजेशन हुआ. वहीं हमने 1 लाख का लिमिट बढ़ा के 2 लाख कर दिया. 2 लाख में 25,000 खर्च करोगे तो आपका 12.5% का टोटल यूटिलाइजेशन है. Do you understand? So it helps you in maintaining your credit score, and that is for many people, especially in the middle class, it's very important. Next, investment into mutual funds, stocks, precious metals to beat inflation. The one precious metal which will beat inflation is gold. But please understand, gold ornaments are not a type of investment. Do understand this part. If anyone tells you, "Oh, I bought gold, I can now keep it for for mortgage. Now I'll get a gold loan." No, don't do that. Again, the interest rate being charged is criminal. You'll get a personal loan for 11%. You get a gold loan for anything north of 20, minimum 20. So the correct way to go and invest in precious metals is through either the gold bonds, or even if you go to a normal retailer of gold, ask them for a gold biscuit or a gold coin or something like that, which does not have too much of workership involved. The moment you have ornaments, you're already paying a lot of money just for the workmanship. वो ornament बनाने के लिए आप काफी पैसा दे रहे हो, तो वो चीज मत करो. That is going to make, that is heavy losses. Unless and until you want to use it, let's say if you have a marriage coming up, obviously you'll need those ornaments. So that is a different case. But if you're using it for inflation, to beat inflation, the first and foremost thing that you do is what? You go for some for instruments like these. Right? Investments into safe assets to preserve capital for the rainy day. Safe assets मतलब क्या हुआ? What is the risk here? The first is liquidation risk. Liquidation risk का मतलब समझना. अगर आज के दिन मुझे सडनली पैसे की जरूरत पड़ती है तो मैं अपना घर बेच के पैसा नहीं कमा सकता हूँ. ये गलत धारणा है. ये the house is still an asset, but I cannot sell it within one day. I can at max take a loan on it, but I cannot sell it in one day. So that is a liquidation asset. You cannot get liquid cash in return of that house immediately. So that is a liquidation asset. A real estate investment has a very high liquidation risk. Right? So you go for, if you want to preserve your capital, you go for, let's say, fixed deposits, your recurring deposits. Those are only to preserve your capital. Bonds of very good companies, let's say something like the Reliance. Now Reliance is not going to default. You know that, right? It's not going to default, at least for the time being. So it's a very safe instrument. Reliance ka bond is a very safe instrument. You can definitely put your money there. I'm talking about the bonds here. And finally, upskill. You need to increase your skills to earn more. The best way to do it. Right? So that was financial freedom. Let's now understand what are the various assets that you have. I'll read it out. I don't know, something's wrong with the font, so maybe you can't read it. So I'll just read it out for you. The risk and the return. The first potential risk, very low. The return is also going to be very low, is cash. Whatever cash that you hold, the risk is very low. The real return is in fact negative. You keep cash under your mattress, under your जो गादी होता है उसके नीचे डालते पैसे या तिजोरी में भर के रखते. It's not going to earn anything. So it's just going to lose. कितना लूज करेगा? इन्फ्लेशन रेट 6%, 7% लूज कर जाएगा. तो आपका रेट ऑफ रिटर्न काफी कम रहेगा, उसमें रिस्क है वो भी काफी कम है. अगला हुआ गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड. गवर्नमेंट डिफॉल्ट करने का चांस कम होता है. क्यों? बिकॉज द गवर्नमेंट हैज द पोटेंशियल टू पुट अप टैक्सेस. If it's going to default, what it will do is it just increase the taxes. लोगों से वो टैक्सेस ज्यादा लेके उस गवर्नमेंट बॉन्ड को पे ऑफ कर सकते हैं. So the government bonds are the next part. High yield fixed income. What is a high yield fixed income? Something like Reliance ka bond. It has slightly higher risk than the government bond. Why? Because Reliance cannot tax you. The government can. The company can't. So Reliance can't tax you. So obviously, because there is a risk now, they will have to give you a higher return. So you understand? So higher yield fixed income. Companies ka corporate bonds. Then comes large company shares. Again, the risk here is higher. Why? Because in case of a bond is a legal entity. Meaning, if tomorrow the company does not give you money, does not give you the money in return of the bond, you can sue the company in court. They are liable for prosecution. That is not the case with shares. आपने shares खरीदा तो रिस्क आपके ऊपर है. तो यहां पर आपका रिस्क स्लाइटली बढ़ गया, लेकिन जो रिटर्न है वो भी उसके साथ बढ़ने वाला है. Then comes small company shares, companies which are not that great. जो आपका टिप मार्केट है मोस्टली इसी पे चलता है. ठीक है, तो सारे जो स्मॉल कंपनी के शेयर्स हैं इनमें रिस्क बहुत ज्यादा रहेगा, रिटर्न्स भी बहुत ज्यादा रहेगा. Again, probability of returns is going down because the risk is going up. Please understand this part, as I mentioned earlier. And finally, venture capital. What is venture capital? You put your money into a company directly. Investment. Directly आपने investment कर दिया है कंपनी के अंदर. वहां पर हर रिस्क आप ले रहे हो. कंपनी का लिक्विडेशन का रिस्क है, डाइवर्सिफिकेशन का रिस्क है. डाइवर्सिफिकेशन मतलब all eggs in one basket. If the basket falls down, all eggs are broken. So as a venture capitalist, if you're putting all your money into one company, you're bound to lose. right? So out of 10 companies generally 10 तो ज़्यादा बोल रहा हूँ, 10 में से 20 में से 30 में से एक कंपनी होता है जो बिलियन डॉलर कंपनी या बड़ा कंपनी बन के निकलता है. तो obviously the risk is very high, right? So those are the risk and return for various asset classes. Now let's understand what the markets are. The Indian stock markets, the NSE and the BSE. National Stock Exchange, Bombay Stock Exchange. Bombay is the oldest one. What are the indices? What is an index? It is nothing but a portfolio of stocks. It is there as a measure of where the market is. So your Nifty and your Sensex or your Bank Nifty is just a portfolio of stocks. उसमें कुछ stocks है जो इंडिया की इकोनॉमी को रिप्रेजेंट करते हैं एक तरह से. तो अगर ये स्टॉक्स ऊपर जाएंगे तो निफ्टी और सेंसेक्स और बैंक निफ्टी भी ऊपर जाएंगे. What are the modes of investment? You can directly buy using cash equities, or you can go into futures and options. What is the requirement that you need to have? You need to have a bank account. You need to have a demat account. And finally, you need to have an investment. A demat account generally comes with a trading account. Investment मतलब cash. हमारे पास पैसा तो होना चाहिए वो करने के लिए. These are the basic requirements for the stock market. Now let's understand some very small important points with respect to the stock markets, and these are very important. If anyone wants to make a career in trading, if you want to get into financial markets, these points are of utmost importance. Please frame them, keep it somewhere. Markets are a futures instrument. Umpteen times I've been getting people telling me that, oh my god, India's GDP is down by 8%. How is the stock market going up? And I'm actually I've been telling them regularly, so many times I've already told so many people that please understand the markets are a futures instrument. They are telling you what might happen, or rather what are the expectations of what might happen in the future. So anything that has already come into the market, it has come into the news, is already discounted. The markets know that. They are not foolish. They understand that the market is that the economy is growing at -8%. But because the markets are going up, it tells you that the expectation is the next time the economy will grow better. Traditionally, markets have remained optimistic. They are representative of the expectations of the future, not a measure of the performance of the past. Please understand this part. Right? This third point is something which I think at least 20% of whatever money I have made on the markets has come through this one point. Buy the rumor, sell the fact. Again, many a times, recently it happened with a stock of mine. I'll tell you what stock it is. It's not something which I don't, these are not recommendations, please. Don't get into that. These are definitely not recommendations. I lost money on that stock, so you can understand. And despite keeping all these rules, I also sometimes falter on them. So we bought Airtel just after it had a stellar earnings report. Airtel का जो earnings है वो बहुत अच्छा है. Market वहाँ से नीचे चला गया. तो कई लोग मेरे को उस टाइम भी पूछे कि यार ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है, कंपनी का अर्निंग्स इतना अच्छा है, ये कैसे नीचे जा सकता है. सो इसमें दो चीजें, सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज, द फर्स्ट इज बाय द रूमर, सेल द फैक्ट. द रूमर वाज दैट एयरटेल वाज गोइंग टू हैव अ स्टेलर क्वार्टर दिस टाइम. सो उसका जो क्वार्टर था उसमें काफी पैसा बनने वाला था. तो इस रूमर पे मार्केट ने उसको बाय करना स्टार्ट कर दिया. मैंने क्या बोला, मार्केट इज अ फ्यूचर्स इंस्ट्रूमेंट. और जिस दिन ये रूमर सच्चाई में बदल गया, मार्केट ने वहीं से अपना जो जितना ही प्रॉफिट बना था वो प्रॉफिट बुक करके निकल गया. दैट इज वन फर्स्ट एक्सप्लेनेशन. द सेकंड एक्सप्लेनेशन इज दिस. if you make 100 rupees, right, if you make 100 rupees, then the next year you make 110 rupees, you made a 10% profit, right? You have a 10% profit, or you have a 10% increase in your revenue. The next year, to clock 10% again, you cannot make just 10 rupees. Now you'll have to make how much? 11 rupees. Please understand, now you have to make how much? You have to make 11 rupees. So it has become harder for you to reach 11 rupees. Right? 10 rupees आप पहुंच पाए, 11 रुपए पहुंचने में slightly harder हो गया. And so on and so forth. When you take it upside, because the companies keep on growing. So that's why, look at the United States, it's growing at 2%. People come on and say, oh my god, India is growing at 10% or 6%, 7%. United States is growing at just 2%. अरे बाबा, उतनी बड़ी इकोनॉमी है वो, उसको उतना ग्रो करने के लिए उतना टाइम भी लगेगा, उतना जल्दी नहीं हो पाता है. तो 2% ग्रो होना उसके लिए सही है, हमारे लिए 6% कम है. तो हम इतनी बड़ी इकोनॉमी नहीं हुए, राइट? Greed and fear are the two prominent emotions. The direct, if you just one on one आपने ले लिया cash markets में आपने डाल दिया, तो greed translates to demand, fear translates to supply. So effectively, whenever you're in the markets, please remember that you are trading against people. There are people involved. So there are emotions involved. So because there are emotions involved, greed and fear are going to creep in. When the markets go down, people are afraid. Right? So always remember that you need to have a plan before you enter the markets. कोई भी एक स्टॉक कुछ भी खरीदने से पहले प्लान बनाओ और फिर उसे खरीदो. ये मत करो कि आपने खरीद लिया उसका डिसाइड कर रहे हो 10% 20% गिर गया स्टॉक, 500 रुपए का स्टॉक 200 पे आ गया, आप बोल रहे हो अब मैं इसको एवरेज कर लूंगा. ये मत करना. ये कोई प्लान नहीं हुआ, ये जुआ खेलना हुआ. इसको जुआ बोलते हैं बिकॉज आप यहाँ पर क्या ब्लाइंडली एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे हैं कभी ना कभी तो ऊपर जाएगा ही. ऐसा नहीं होता है. 2008 में एक कंपनी थी यूनिटेक करके, उसका प्राइस आज के डेट में देख लेना 400 रुपए से सीधा 8 रुपए पे पहुंचा है. अब मुझे पता नहीं अभी कितना चल रहा होगा बट रफली 20 से तो नीचे ही. तो ये गलत इसमें मत रहना कि हाँ स्टॉक मार्केट तो ऊपर ही जाएगा, ऐसा नहीं होता. Anything, I repeat, anything is possible within the financial space. Anything. You think a rule cannot be broken? It can be. Before you enter the markets, just put that in your mind that anything is possible in the financial space. Finally, something that I called Facebook finance, the impact of social media. Earlier, when you were trading, you didn't have access to a lot of news. So what would you do? Because आपके पास न्यूज नहीं है तो आप उसे ढूंढने की कोशिश करते थे यहाँ वहां से. इसमें एक बहुत अच्छा एक एग्जांपल मेरे पास आया है. So this is one trader I look up to, and this guy he's a phenomenal trader. There's a book called Talks with Traders or something like that, right? So Market Wizards करके book का नाम है और उसमें this guy is there, right? So I'll tell you what exactly happened. Now I'll take you back some years ago. Many of you might not be born during that time. I was also not born. If I'm not mistaken, somewhere around 1980s, I guess, or rather even earlier, 60s or 70s. And during this time, the Middle East was a turbulent time, just like today. Middle East उस समय में बहुत ज़्यादा turbulent हुआ करता था. The one prime leader who came out was Saddam Hussein. So Saddam Hussein was a very big leader then. And what happened was, the worst time to trade generally are the US lots. मतलब US R में trade करना बहुत ही खराब होता है क्योंकि आपको दुनिया में जो हुआ सबसे लास्ट इंफॉर्मेशन आपको मिलेगा. जो एशियन होता है इनको सब कुछ मिल जाता है, यूरोपियन होता है उसको ब्रॉडली सब कुछ मिल जाता है, लेकिन यूएस वाले को सबसे लास्ट में मिलेगा. सो बाय द टाइम द यूएस गाय गेट्स अप, wakes up and starts looking at what has happened in the world, the markets have already reacted. But this one particular trader that I read about, he was an extremely diligent trader. वो क्या करता था, सवेरे 4 बजे उठ के यूएस टाइम सवेरे 4 बजे उठ के टीवी ऑन करके न्यूज देखता था 5 मिनट के लिए. वो न्यूज देख के जाके सो जाता. 5-10 मिनट का न्यूज देख के वो सोने चला जाता. आई एम नॉट आस्किंग यू टू डू दैट, बट व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू टेल यू इज दिस. He kept on doing that for multiple years altogether, multiple years. And this is a real story. This is the real story that I'm talking about. This guy kept on doing that for multiple years with no कुछ खास रिटर्न वगैरह नहीं आया उसको उस चीज. Then one fine day, Saddam Hussein invaded the country of Kuwait. सद्दाम हुसैन ने कुवैत में इन्वेड कर दिया. Iraq invaded Kuwait. Now this news, then there was no social media, no Twitter, nothing, so you wouldn't get this news that fast. This would only travel using your normal conventional tools, that is the news and everything else, right? So what happens now? Now this guy is waking up at 4 o'clock, he looks at the news and he immediately realizes that, oh my god, Saddam Hussein has just invaded a country, that means they are going at war. It means that what will happen? People will rush for their money. They will get out of financial markets because wars are turbulent times. You never know what can happen. So people will immediately remove all their money. But at the same time, what will they do? They'll put it in safer assets. What are the safer assets? Gold. This guy wakes up, calls every single exchange in the Middle East. He calls up every single exchange in the Middle East, Dubai, everywhere, and buys every single ounce of gold on their stock exchanges. Every single ounce of gold. And they didn't know that this was happening. So they kept on selling it. When the markets opened, his investment in gold that particular day had almost doubled. At one point, and this is very true, at one point he was the only major seller of gold in every exchange. यानी समझो उसने इतना गोल्ड खरीद लिया था कि दुनिया में दुनिया का जो हर कोई इंसान है वो उसी से गोल्ड लेने जा रहा था उस एक्सचेंज पर. He was obviously barred from trading later on because the exchanges are generally very cruel at these things. But he made a lifetime of money. He didn't need any more money then. So that one very small, activity of getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning and just sitting up and watching news paid off for this guy. So please, the impact of social media is very high. If you are a trader, gluing to social media, and when I say gluing to social media, I don't mean you go to TikTok or all your other channels. You go and follow people who are actually in that space, who are going to give you quality information. The challenge today is not getting information. The challenge today is getting quality information. Sifting out of many. बहुत सारे कचरा वाले information में से आपको important information निकाल के उस पर trade करना है. Right? Information today is easy to get but difficult to sort. Couple of more slides and then we'll end this. Actually, just 2 more slides remaining. So, घरेलू नुस्खे ये मेरे नुस्खे हैं. मैं सबको ये चीज बताता हूँ. We'll quickly run through them. Get an insurance done first. Term plan लेना है. Endowment नहीं लेना है. Health care plan जो है इसे भी लो. Term plan के साथ साथ एक health care या फिर एक mediclaim policy रहना चाहिए. Term plan आपको health में आपको कुछ हो जाएगा तो नहीं आपको पैसे देने वाला है. It is there. It will give you money only when you die. So you also add a health insurance to it, right? Loans on appreciating assets. Do not buy a loan for a car. Buy a mutual fund for a car, right? SIPs are the way to go. If you're not in the market, if you don't want to be a trader, if you're not there, don't get into the markets. Put your money into SIPs. SIPs are basically systematic investment plans. Every month you put some money. 1,000 से भी आप start कर सकते हो. 500 रुपए से भी start कर सकते हो. हर महीने आप डालते रहो. Eventually the money grows decently. In the last 5, 6, 7 years, whatever the time that I've been working, all major needs that I've had have been actually satisfied by only this one thing, SIPs. Never lost too much money on it. They have been fabulous for me. Don't listen to people who are going to tell you all sorts of, they're going to tell you, oh, SIP mat kar, tu jaake market mein trade kar. If you are not there, if you are not watching the markets, don't trade unnecessarily. The idea is this. Think about it this way. Let's say you are an architecture student, or you are an architect, or you are an engineer, or you are a scientist. Can I beat you in your job? I can't. So don't beat me on mine. As simple as that. Right? I'm glued to the screens 24 hours. I'm looking at what the markets are doing. At least 80 to 90% of the times I'm going to make more money than you. Right? So the key is not to make money once. The key is to keep on making it multiple times. That's how you make money. You don't go for large investments. And that is a recent fad also. Bitcoin है तब से ये बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ गया कि मैं ₹1 डालूंगा अरे एक दिन में ₹10 हो जाएगा. ये नहीं करना. Go for smaller chunks. That's the way you increase your money. Right? Set up goals. Make investments accordingly. ट्रेड करने के लिए अगर ट्रेड करना चाहते हो आप तो पहले राइट इन्फॉर्मेशन ढूंढो. We get that on our platform. We do it for people. You can go to our platform. You can go to Tradia. You'll find all of that there. Right information. We just put out only the information that is required by you, for trading. So the information, the news that we are putting out is only tradable news. We make it sure that we are putting out only tradable news. No opinion pieces, no other bullshit. We are just putting out tradable news. You keep on learning from your mistakes. There is a graduation cost. I call it graduation cost because when you get into the markets, you're going to be hammered at least once. There's no single person in this entire world who has not lost money in the markets. The key is to keep on doing the same thing over and over again by changing it, by learning from your mistakes. Set up your goals and make investments accordingly. Goals बना लो. 5 साल बाद आपको कॉलेज करना हो, यूएस जाना है, वहां जाके पढ़ाई करनी होगी. गोल बना लो, ज़्यादा इजी होगा. फाइनेंशियल गोल है तो उसके लिए पैसा आज से डालना स्टार्ट कर दो. टिप्स ये इंपॉर्टेंट होते हैं. आई वोंट से कि आप टिप के बेसिस पे मत करो, लेकिन टिप जब भी आप ले रहे हो, दे आर इंपॉर्टेंट, दे आर गुड ओनली इफ यू हैव अ प्लान इन प्लेस, इफ यू आर गोइंग टू ट्रेड. अगर आप बिना प्लान के टिप में घुस रहे हो तो मत करो. Enough research रहना जरूरी है उस टिप में. Again, there are many such sites. We are also one of them. You can take our help. If you want some research on a particular stock, you can come to us. We can tell you that. If you want to learn, we also have a series for that. We have a course for that. We can teach you how do we make our calls. We call it Gurukul, right? So just the idea is, and this is where our premise also is, we don't want you to make quick money. Don't go in that direction, because the problem is people don't understand that quick money comes with a lot of risk. They think that, oh, I've made money, then that's great. That's not the case. So please do remember that you have to have enough research to back the tip. Don't put your blind faith on anyone's research, even including our research. Even if we are giving you research, don't put your blind faith on us. You do your own research first. Don't play Russian roulette with the markets. Right? Beating inflation is the basic necessity. Beating index is the excellence that you try for, and returns equal to the index are the reality you should be happy with. Inflation beat करना ये आपका basic necessity है. Index को beat करना, Nifty Sensex को beat करना ये आपका excellence है. Nifty 5% 50% बनाता है तो आपने 60% बना लिया, आप बहुत अच्छा काम किया. आपका रिटर्न्स जो है वो इंडेक्स के बराबर है, तो ये आप you have done a good job. It's okay, you can be happy with that. Okay, and finally, I think this was something which a lot of people ask me, what are the careers in finance, right? So I'll basically divide these two careers separately. The first is the back end and the second is the front end. People also call them sell side and buy side. I'll tell you what exactly it is. The front end consists of traders, portfolio managements, fund managements, venture capitalists. Venture capitalist rather is not there, but I've just included it for the sake of understanding. Fund management जो करते हैं, fund managers, mutual funds हो गया. All of these come under front end. We call them buy side, meaning they are taking their money and buying, literally buying in the market. Right? Then there is the back end, the sell side. What does the sell side do? It sells you products. Brokers, bankers, investment bankers, exchanges, other auxiliary services, right? You have sub brokers, all of those things. So what is the key difference and how do you get into these jobs? For a trader, I don't think you need any kind of graduation or anything whatsoever. But yes, companies do have that to sift through. You have a lot of talent out there, so you need to sift through that talent. So for that, the companies have some small arrangements that yes, you should be a graduate at least. But more than that, I don't think any proprietary trading firm would ever ask you for anything more than that. You should just be a good trader. A portfolio manager might require an MBA. A fund manager might also require an MBA. Additionally, there are certain examinations that SEBI asks. SEBI is the regulator in our markets, Securities and Exchange Board of India. So SEBI also asks you for certain other ways, certain other qualifications. They're called NISM. They come under NISM. NISM certifications, they have a lot of certifications. So if you want to get into an investment advisor, you need to, there are section 8, section 8A, section 8B. ये सब जो exams है, you need to give those exams. And on top of that, you also need to have a graduation, a post-graduation, beg your pardon. A post-graduation if you're an engineering graduate or anything outside finance. A normal graduation if you're in the finance territory, if you're a commerce student, let's say. And on top of that, 5 years of experience, relevant experience. कोई भी experience नहीं, 5 years of financial experience. If you have that, you can apply for, after you pass those 2 exams, you can apply for a registered investment advisor. Right? On the back end, you might have a lot of requirements. Brokers, bankers, investment bankers, all those require some sort of MBA or some, like that is the easy way. I won't say require, but I would say that is the easiest way to get into those fields. Investment banking, especially if you want to get into it, the best way to do it is through MBAs. There are certain other qualifications that might actually serve you. Something called CFA. I am sure pretty many of you must be knowing what CFA is. Certified Financial Analyst, Certified Financial Planners, Chartered Financial Analyst, beg your pardon. So CFA, CFP, you have FRM, Risk Management Services. These are again, all three are different certifications. The exam costs you a decent bit. Like CFA, I think it will cost you somewhere around 75,000 for the first exam. There are 3 examinations in CFA. Along with that, to hold the charter, you have to pass those 3 examinations. Those are not easy. It takes roughly about minimum 18 months. right? Because there are 3 examinations at different intervals, but generally people complete it within 2 to 3 years. If you fail at it, it's not, you're not alone, many people have failed at it, right? So ऐसा होता है कई बार. So CFA हो गया, CFP हो गया. CFP is I think 2 examinations, FRM is 1 exam. So all 3 are different domains. I'll tell you what CFA does. CFA is basically in the buy side area. So the buy side people generally get a CFA because it is easier to get into all these distributions. If you want to be a sell side guy, if you want to be, go out and advise people on how they can plan their future, how they can plan their work, how they can plan their salaries, you get a CFP, a certified financial planner. And finally, the FRM is a part of the CFA. I would say the course is a part of the CFA. It's a very niche part which relates to risk management. So all these big funds, they have a lot of risk management teams. कल को मार्केट गिर गया तो आपका कितना पैसा नुकसान हो सकता है, आपको क्या करना चाहिए, ये सब बताने के लिए आपके पास risk management teams होते हैं, right? So on that note, like, after all of that, on that note, I would end my presentation here. I hope you learned a lot. So you can now shoot all your questions. I can take them one-on-one. I can help you out with all your questions, and give you a decent idea about how and when you can go ahead with them, right? So I'm now open to questions. You can start asking them directly.
Thank you, Amit.
Sure. Any questions, guys?
Yes, sir. As you talked about in the beginning of your section about the bubble market. So how to identify that bubble in the market if a person is trading in the market?
That's a very good question, but I'll tell you a different answer to it, right? So let's say you hold a knife, right? So अगर एक knife ऊपर से आप गिरा दो नीचे और उस knife को रोकने के लिए आपका हाथ जो है उसे नीचे रखो तो क्या होगा? Knife रुक जाएगा. कितने जल्दी रुक जाएगा? पहले आपके हाथ को hurt करके जाएगा ना, right? So whenever, just remember one thing: never try to catch a falling knife. So let's say if the markets have gone up and they are still going up, don't unnecessarily bother yourself by trying to catch the topmost point. Stay in the market. ट्रेंड को फॉलो करो, ट्रेंड के ऑपोजिट में खेलने की कोशिश मत करो. इफ यू आर अ स्मॉल टाइम इन्वेस्टर, डोंट ट्राई टू गो अगेंस्ट द मार्केट. When the market starts going down, have a plan in place. Let's say if you bought a stock at 500, you should know what you would be doing if the stock reaches 450 before you have even entered the market, right? तो ये चीज हमेशा याद रखना कि don't try to catch something which is very difficult to catch. People kept on saying, "Oh, 45,000 is the bubble." No, it can't go beyond 45,000. It's now 50. My expectation is that it could like I have my investments very close to like they are actually in the process of like I would make money if it goes up till 60,000. And I'm actually betting on that. I think the market would actually go up till 60,000. That is my personal bet. I'm not asking you to believe in that thing, but it could go wrong. It's not that it can't. Like I'm not God, right? So it can definitely go wrong. But the key difference is I do have a plan if it goes wrong, and that is where most people falter. So don't try to think about it in those terms. It's almost impossible. No, not even Warren Buffett can come out and tell you that. I'll give you another example. When Raghuram Rajan in 2005 predicted that there's going to be a bubble, right? It was 2005. Think about it. 3 years later, the bubble actually burst. So in trading terms, how much loss you would have taken? A lot of losses. A lot. Listening to Raghuram Rajan, you would have gone short in the market, and then for the next 3 years, the market would have just kept on going up and up and up. As a small retail investor, it's impossible to continue like that. You cannot do that. It's very difficult. There were some fund managers which held on to it for 1.5 years. And frankly, it's almost impossible. Had it gone on for another 6 months, they would have definitely liquidated. So I generally don't believe in all these things. My idea is very simple. If you're a small term trader, stick to the trend. ऊपर जा रहा है तो बाय करो, चुपचाप बैठ जाओ. ये मत सोचो कि यार ऊपर जा रहा है कब दम टॉप पे पहुंच जाएगा. ऊपर जाना स्टार्ट हुआ है, बाय करो. मौका देगा। और ये कैसे पता करना है, इसके लिए थोड़े बहुत स्टडीज लगेंगे, आपको टेक्निकल एनालिसिस सीखना पड़ेगा, फंडामेंटल एनालिसिस सीखना पड़ेगा, all of which again is there available on our platform. You can come to us. We run something called Gurukul. So on Gurukul you can definitely come to us. We'll one-to-one doubt sessions भी होते हैं हम लोग के. The next batch for Gurukul in fact is going to start in the next I think 2 weeks. So you can go to our website tradia.in. You'll get all those. You'll get a link to register for the event for Gurukul. So it's something which we teach to our students as well, right? So we teach them how to identify where the support prices are, where the resistance prices are. We teach them how to take a position in options. We try to teach them how to take a position in futures, in gold, in cryptocurrencies, right? So we have a lot of assets there covered, and all of the people who come on board have a lot of experience. Some with 16 plus years of experience. The cumulative experience is close to 30 and 35 years experience. So everyone is pretty experienced. They'll tell you what their secrets are. They'll obviously help you out with your doubts. One-on-one doubts भी रहेंगे. तो वो सब we do it a lot. So if you want to learn more about those things, you can definitely come to our platform and you can do it. But in terms of trying to catch the bubble, please don't try doing that. Any other questions?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your answer.
Yeah.
Hemant P is asking, what would you prefer, constant slow returns or fluctuating returns with many highs and lows?
Constant, any day constant. As a trader, I think having constant returns is one of the best things. I'll tell you why. And when I say constant returns, obviously they can't be low. It has to be a decent return level also. ऐसा नहीं होगा कि मैं 2% 3% के लिए इतना रहूँगा, ये नहीं कर सकता हूँ. So the idea is you have to be consistent. Consistency is the key. See, Virat Kohli is a very great cricketer because he has been consistent. Please understand the difference. Century तो कोई भी मार लेता है. इतने बार सेंचुरी मारना अलग बात होती है. And that is what separates the good traders from the bad. You have to be consistent. The people who have actually made money, like even for Bitcoin, I would say, there have been people who have been consistently making money for the last 5-6 years at least. If the traders that we have, so we have traders who have made $17-18 million also. So all those traders, those are guys who have been there for a lot. They'll stick to their desk. They are extremely disciplined, and even under volatile situations, their returns are almost always consistent. So for me, it's definitely about consistency. एक बार अगर ज़्यादा मिल रहा है तो I won't, ऐसा नहीं हो कि like suddenly I'm getting 1,000% return. Who wouldn't want that? Definitely, I would definitely want to have that. But in practical terms, I'm telling you the probability of you having 1,000 or let's say 200-300% return is low. In these markets, maybe it is high. But yeah, the idea is you should be able to beat the exchange. That is the only idea that you should keep in your mind. If the exchange is making 50%, don't stick to your 10%. If the exchange is making 10%, don't say you're going to earn 50%. So both these things you need to understand.
Thank you for the answer, Amit. So there is a question by Chirag Agrawal. So it is: do you think people will be doing analysis in future, or they will shifting to algo trading for better results?
Okay, so I think that question is specifically to my domain. So I'll try to answer this in some different terms. So what exactly is an algo? Think about it that way. And I'm not talking about AI here. I don't know how AI works. AI might be a different ball game altogether. So the algo is basically a set of instructions that you have provided to the computer to make a decision, right? So there are two types of algos. The first is a gray box. The second is a black box. The gray box is basically something which, based on whatever the conditions that you have set, it will tell you whether you have a signal or not. It will just give you a signal that okay, you can buy this or sell this. That is a gray box. A black box is something which runs independent of you, meaning you just provide the signals and it will keep on taking trades. Okay? So understand this. What is the one big difference between the algo and you? It is emotions. The algo does not have emotions. So the algo is still going to take a call irrespective of whether the market is doing something or not. It's not going to get afraid of what's happening. Number one, what is the next big advantage that the algo has over you? Right? I wouldn't call the emotion part as having an advantage, but what is the next big thing? Speed. So, in my opinion, unless and until you're looking at high frequency or ultra high frequency trading, which is meaning buying and selling in very short terms of time, in extremely short terms, short bursts of time rather, 1 second, 2 second, I personally don't see algos running the entire trading business. Algos will be there, they'll have a significant amount, but humans are not replaceable in that sense. I don't know about AI, whether they can replace humans or not. That's a speculation thing. I think we're not yet there. Else you would have seen that definitely. For like finance is the first place where you would see all those algorithms and everything come out. But as far as I know, I don't think any AIs are there in the market as of now. But yeah, with respect to the algos, both have to coexist in my opinion. It's not something which is that easy. Uh, Computers have become smart, but the emotions that drive us, they are in many ways a very good thing to have. Like many a times I've actually stopped myself from taking a very big loss because I was very fearful. So it's not that you have to discard fear or discard greed always. You have to use it in such a way that it helps you. So not having emotions is not a very great positive sign as well. So if you're trading for the long term, I think broadly speaking, it's not that they are not here to replace you, right? So they are here to complement you. So algos and humans are mostly going to complement each other with respect to trading. Yeah, it will definitely make the space a lot more competitive. That I can tell you. When I say competitive is मतलब पहले आपके रिटर्न्स अगर 20-30% के थे तो एल्गो के आने के बाद वो डेफिनेटली 6-7% आ जाएगा तो इट विल ड्राइव आउट अ लॉट ऑफ बैड प्लेयर्स आउट ऑफ द मार्केट बट in sheer terms I think it's going to like both of them are going to stay. It's not something which is going away. Any other doubts?
Thank you, Amit, for answering all the questions. I think there are many doubts, obviously, but if anyone has any more doubts, they can reach out to Amit in his YouTube channel, Tradia.
So I'll
So
just
I think it's time.
pick out one or two doubts from the channel also before. So uh,
Yeah, yeah.
Vishal had asked only around 1% people pay income tax in India. That's the exact reason why such a low percent. Yeah, maybe that is one of the reasons. I'm sorry, it's not a doubt. It's just a point that Vishal was making. Uh, yeah, that's it from my end. So if you want to, if you want to just reach out to me, you can go to our website also, tradia.in. Gurukul, as I mentioned earlier, is there. You can register for that particular thing. We're going to start a batch very soon in the next 2 weeks. So as I said, a lot of people are going to come in to teach you and all those things. If you want to reach out to to me personally, you can also have my phone number. I've already given it to the organizers. If you have any other doubts, you can just reach out to me directly. We also run some Telegram groups. You can go there. A lot of people, all of those are free actually. So you can go there. You can get your doubts solved there as well. So any doubts whatsoever, early morning, roughly around 9 o'clock, 8:30, 8:30, 9 o'clock. We also hold pre-market sessions. So if you have any doubts there also, you can come and directly go to our YouTube channel and ask us any questions. Right? So we'll help you out there also.
Excuse me?
Yeah, sure. Ask me.
Did we get the e-certificate?
I'm not. So I think the managers will.
Yeah. So any other doubts regarding the everything regarding certificates and thing we will deal later. So now I think the session is over. So we will cap the session here. So any more doubts regarding trading and something related to the session, you can ask Amit in personally through his LinkedIn or in YouTube channel. And right. So everything I think is clear. So should we cap the session?
Sure, sure. It's done from my
Yeah.
end. Uh, just a minute. So I see a lot of doubts. Can you just compile them and send it to me? What I'll do is I'll send the
Yeah,
answers together.
yeah. I will send all the doubts to your WhatsApp,
Yeah.
and you can.
If you have time,
Should I share?
No, if you have time, I can solve them here also if you want.
Okay, so there is a doubt from Aniket.
Yeah.
He's saying, sir, you told earlier that all the known and good traders don't take a higher risk until they get a guaranteed return. So how is it possible to get a guaranteed return against a higher risk? As it is guaranteed means that we do not have any fear of risk.
I think I might have said the wrong thing here. I'm not saying guaranteed returns. Please don't get me wrong. You're reducing the amount of risk for the same amount of return. So let's say आपको 10% रिटर्न मिलता था और उसमें आप रिस्क ले रहे थे 2% का. अगर वही 10% आपको 1% में मिल रहा है तो वो लेना ज्यादा बेहतर है. Any other doubts, guys? What are some good resources? I see that. As far as markets are related, if you want to know what are the best source, I think half of my source, at least 60-70% of my source comes from Twitter. And I'll tell you why that is the case. Twitter is the fastest thing right now in the market with respect to sources. It takes time for all those other sites to get you some of the other news elements. So as long as you are, if you are a trader, if you want to be a trader, the best way to go through is to go to Twitter. If you are an investor, if you're chilled, if you don't want to waste that much time going to Twitter and all that, so you can just go to Money Control. Also, you can come to our site. Also, we put out our the entire news of the day in one, and that is predominantly why we are doing it, because we don't want you to waste your time listening to the news. So you look at one page and you get all the news at that particular instant about markets, whichever is the tradable news, rather. Right, so you can do that as well. There are many other platforms also which provide decent enough news. Just don't go for opinions. Economists many a time are wrong. So that is the one thing that is very common. The fight between economists and traders is ongoing always, right? My LinkedIn ID, yeah, I think it's already been posted there. So if it doesn't reach your target, Vedic, I think you asked me what are your opinion about setting target for the price of share. So even the setting of that share, the target setting wala part is also dependent on how you analyze it, right? So there are a lot of technical analysis tools which you generally have in place. Now, irrespective of those tools, there might be cases where you might not be able to reach your target. So the way I look at it is, I have two sets of target. The first target is very easy to achieve, right? So at that target, I'll at least cut 1/3 of my position. Let's say I bought 200 shares, or let's say 100 shares. I'll cut 33%, 100%. Like my 33 shares to at least nikal lunga at my first target, minimum. And then I'll hope that the other 60, I shouldn't say hope, but the next target, I would remove the other 60, 66, whatever it is, 67. So that is one strategy which has again helped me a lot. What it does is, it does not make you go, greed wala jo part hai, it takes care of that. Right? So that is another thing which has helped me.
Thank you, sir, for giving your valuable insights.
Sure.
Today, I think we are good for now. Thank you, everyone. We have come to the end of our webinar. I would like to thank everyone who made this meeting possible. Now you can leave. Goodbye.